Hello beautiful people, I hope you're doing amazing. My name is Vendi and today I'm gonna do something that I haven't done before on this channel. So as you can tell, I'm bare-faced and wet-haired and all freshly showered after my little daily workout. And it's a surprisingly warm and beautiful day in Boston, so my boyfriend and I were thinking that we would sort of just go around the city. I have a midterm paper that I still need to finish up writing. But in addition to that, I kind of want to get to reading Sightwitch by Susan Dennard. I've had this book for a couple days now and I sort of feel like weird not having read it because I'm so obsessed with the series. And it's remarkably short, so I'm thinking I'm just gonna vlog my entire reading process. It shouldn't take me longer than today, and finish it up with a little review for you guys. So yeah, let's see how that goes. Actually get much reading done, but on the plus side I was super productive as far as writing my essay went, so I have basically the whole day free now. And Marco and I, say hi.
Hello.
Are going to the Muji store now, so a lot of beautiful Japanese stationery awaits. Barnes & Noble, and I managed to pull myself away from the stacks of new books calling to me to sit down with Sightwitch finally, so I'm going to go ahead and read. For today I got about 50 pages into Sightwitch and things are heating up. I'm really excited to continue with it, and I'll definitely do that when I get home, which is where we're headed now. I don't want to talk about it much because I feel like it'll be super spoilery, so you should go ahead and read it so you understand what I'm talking about. Things are seriously heating up and I haven't pulled a reading all-nighter in a really long time, so I think I'm gonna do that. But for now, the boy and I are gonna take a little break and gonna watch some Arrested Development. I fell asleep last night. I'm almost done with Sightwitch. I didn't fall asleep because it got boring. I fell asleep because I was just really tired. It's actually super intense all the way through, and I didn't expect anything else. Susan Dennard is really good at keeping up an appropriate amount of tension at all times. It's never too much, but it's always just enough to keep you flipping to the next page. I think I'm gonna go make myself some tea before I continue. I don't know. I'm still pretty tired. Tea first, then I'll make a decision. So I just finished reading Sightwitch by Susan Dennard, and I have so many feelings to share with you guys. If you're unfamiliar with what Sightwitch is, it's a prequel to Susan Dennard's Witchland series, so Truthwitch and Windwitch. Sightwitch follows Ryber, a sightless Sightwitch that we know from Truthwitch, in the Sightwitch convent. We're told that Ryber found her way into the convent when she was just a child of 4 years old, and because the convent is glamored to keep intruders out, that is a very rare thing to happen. She's the only Sightwitch sister to have ever found the convent by herself, and because of that, the older Sightwitch sisters say that Ryber is going to be the best of the Sightwitch sisters when she finally gets her eyes cleared and they become silver and she can do all these fun precognitive things that Sightwitches are supposed to do. Most Sightwitch sisters get their eyes cleared pretty quickly, but Ryber turns 17 in the convent and she still is pall-eyed, meaning her eyes haven't been cleared yet. And she doesn't seem to mind very much until her best friend and all the other sighted Sightwitch sisters get called into the goddess's mountain. So one day, after some scary goings on begin to happen in the convent and Ryber is absolutely tired of being there alone and doing nothing while her sisters are missing, she decides to go into the mountain herself and find them and hopefully break them free from whatever's keeping them in there. So I personally really loved this novella. Unlike the rest of the Witchland series, Sightwitch was in first-person point of view, and I feel like that was really necessary considering how short it was to give us an idea of Ryber's character. Sightwitch is a really stylized, strangely formatted novella, so it reads as though it were Ryber's diary, following this entire plot. Because it's her diary, it's very much from her point of view, so you really get into her head and understand how she thinks and how she feels. You also get all of her particular biases and everything that goes along with literally living in someone's head for about 200 pages. We also get some flashbacks to about 1,000 years prior to the events of Sightwitch, because Ryber finds the diary of an ancient Sightwitch sister who everyone thought was a legend called Eridesi. But mostly we're stuck in Ryber's head. Ryber isn't an overly reflective character, so her characterization mostly comes through in how she says things and the actions she reports having taken throughout the story. The story was too short to really delve into her character any more than I think we got in Sightwitch without bogging down the plot. And I'm also glad that there wasn't an overabundance of extraneous characters who don't really move the plot forward. Aside from the very beginning and some of the flashbacks to Eridesi's diary, really we only have Ryber as a character in this story. We also meet Cullen, her future heartthread. I love Cullen. He is such a little puppy, and you knew that from reading Truthwitch anyway, but seeing him sort of be the star on the scene in Sightwitch just makes him even more adorable, especially to see him interacting with Ryber, who he doesn't know yet, but it's still really sweet and bantery when they talk. That being said, and perhaps it's because of the length of the story, but there were times when Cullen's character felt a little bit flat, and he seemed to be reduced to just a witty one-liner kind of guy, which I wasn't a big fan of, because I like my characters to have a little more depth to them. And of course later on we'd get scenes where he proves that he's more than just a little bit of a snarky, awkward dude that Ryber has definitely a thing for. So that kind of makes up for it. And I also logically know that in this story Ryber has just met Cullen, so she doesn't have all of the feelings and developed thoughts and opinions about him that she does later in Truthwitch. She's just now meeting him, so it makes sense that it's sort of tentative at first because of the way that Ryber's characterized. And overall, the crux of Sightwitch's story wasn't the romance between Cullen and Ryber, so it makes sense to think about the fact that she's probably going to get to know him later, and then there he's going to excel as a person and be worthy of my precious baby Ryber, who I love very, very much after this story. I thought the pacing of Sightwitch was pretty excellent considering the amount of space it had. I think Susan did a very good job of keeping the tension consistent throughout without making it overbearing. Because she had to cram an entire story into 200 pages, things had to move forward fairly quickly, but it never felt as though anything was getting rushed over. I would have liked to, if anything, get another 20-30 pages in here just to amp up the characterization of Ryber and Cullen a little bit. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed Sightwitch. I don't think it's necessary to have read Truthwitch and Windwitch in order to enjoy Sightwitch, but there are so many Easter eggs and little tiny things hidden in the story and things that are probably going to make sense in subsequent books that I think it's worth it to have done so. It's also interesting to have a sort of background knowledge of the world before you get into Sightwitch, because Sightwitch sort of opens up more the lore of the Witchlands. My only complaint, from which all of my mini complaints really stem, is that Sightwitch was just a little short for me. Like I said before, I would have liked another 20 or 30 pages in which we could get a little more characterization for Ryber, especially as the main character, but then maybe 10 of those 30 pages for Cullen as well, because he really did feel a little flat. But besides that, Sightwitch just sort of reawakened my never really dormant, but a little bit dormant love for the Witchlands world, and now I have to reread Truthwitch and Windwitch because my heart is calling for me to do so. I ended up giving Sightwitch a 4.25 out of 5 stars, and I absolutely can't wait to reread it after the publishing of Blood Witch and the rest of the books in the Witchland series to try to find all the Easter eggs that Susan Dennard has put into this one. She says that Sightwitch is going to answer all the questions that you might have about the world, that everything will be put in this one, that you just won't understand it. And I completely believe her, because after reading Sightwitch, I have only more questions about this world that I can't wait to be answered in the subsequent books. Alrighty guys, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you like me in general, feel free to subscribe. Leave me a comment down below if you've read Sightwitch and you want to talk fan theories, because that's all I can think about. And if you haven't, I would suggest going to your local bookstore and buying it so we can talk about it later. But until then, that's it from me guys, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.